I never thought of myself as a liar. For 33 years, I lived a life built entirely on truth. Or at least, what I believed the truth was. I followed every rule. I walked the straight line my parents drew for me. I went to a prestigious university. I got a respectable job in marketing. I bought a house in a quiet neighborhood. And, of course, I married Mark. Mark is a good man. He is the kind of man who remembers your mother's birthday and always checks the tire pressure on your car. He is safe. He is predictable. Then, he's everything a woman is supposed to want. When he proposed to me in a crowded restaurant, I cried. But looking back now, I don't know if I was crying out of joy or out of a deep subconscious panic that the door was finally locking behind me. I said yes. We had a beautiful wedding. We bought a golden retriever. We settled into a routine that was so perfectly comfortable, it felt like being anesthetized. I woke up at the same time every day. I made the same coffee. I kissed him on the cheek before work. It was a life without sharp edges. There were no terrible fights, but there was no overwhelming passion either. I thought this was normal. I thought the fiery, world-ending romances you see in movies were just fiction designed to sell tickets. Real life was quiet. Real life was Mark asking me if we needed more paper towels. I accepted my reality. I truly believed I was happy. I had no idea that I was just sleeping. I had no idea that the foundation of my entire existence was built on a massive, terrifying repression. To understand how completely my world collapsed, you have to understand the girl I was before I became Mark's wife. You have to understand Maya. In high school, Maya and I were inseparable. We were a single, breathing entity. We did everything together. We shared clothes. We shared secrets. We spent every weekend in my bedroom, listening to music and staring at the ceiling, dreaming about the future. I loved her more than I loved anyone else in the world. People called us best friends. Teachers called us attached at the hip. But it was more than that. The way I felt about her was heavy. It was a physical ache in my chest when she wasn't around. I just didn't have the vocabulary to explain it. I grew up in a conservative town in the early 2000s. Girls didn't fall in love with girls. It wasn't an option on the menu of my life. So, I took all those confusing, intense, terrifying feelings and I buried them. I shoved them so deep into the dark corners of my mind that I forgot they were there. I forced myself to look at boys. I forced myself to date them. And Maya watched. She watched me go to prom with a boy named Steve. She helped me do my makeup. She smiled for the photos. And then, the day after graduation, she packed her bags and moved to London. She didn't say a proper goodbye. She just left. I was devastated. I cried for weeks. I felt like a limb had been amputated. But life moved on. Time is a ruthless eraser. The sharp pain of losing her eventually faded into a dull ache, and then into nothing at all. I became an adult. I met Mark. I built a new life, a safe life, a straight life. I hadn't thought about Maya in over a decade, until that Tuesday morning in October. It was a Tuesday like any other. It was raining lightly, the sky a dull, unforgiving gray. I was sitting in my favorite local coffee shop, typing away on my laptop, trying to finish a marketing proposal. The bell above the door chimed. I didn't look up immediately. I was too focused on my screen. But then I heard a voice I hadn't heard in 15 years. Yet it bypassed my brain and went straight to my nervous system. Ollie? Nobody called me Ollie. Not my parents, not Mark, not anyone. That was her name for me. Only hers. I froze. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Slowly, I lifted my head. Standing by the counter, holding a black coffee, was Maya. She was 33 now. She looked older, of course, but she was more beautiful than I remembered. Her dark hair was cut into a sharp, chic bob. She wore a tailored black coat and dark jeans. She looked intimidating. She looked like a woman who knew exactly who she was. Maya? No, I whispered, my voice barely working. I stood up so fast I knocked my knee against the table. The coffee in my mug spilled over the edge, but I didn't care. I walked toward her. My legs felt like lead. We met in the middle of the small cafe and hugged. The moment her arms wrapped around me, the universe tilted on its axis. I smelled her perfume. It was earthy, with a hint of vanilla. It was a scent that had been locked away in my memory for 15 years. And the moment I smelled it, the dam broke. The wall I had built inside my mind completely shattered. My heart started to race. It wasn't beating, it was violently hammering against my ribs. My breath hitched. My palms began to sweat. In that 5-second embrace, 15 years of carefully constructed denial evaporated. I realized, with a clarity that was absolutely terrifying, that I didn't just miss my best friend. I was in love with her. I had always been in love with her. Every confusing feeling I had at 17 suddenly made perfect sense. I was a married woman, standing in a coffee shop, realizing I was hopelessly in love with another woman. We sat down at my table. I don't remember what I said. I was running on pure adrenaline. Maya told me she had moved back to the States for a new job. She was an art director for a magazine. She was single. She was living in an apartment just 3 miles from my house. 3 miles. For 15 years, she had been an ocean away, and now she was 3 miles away. We talked for 3 hours. My phone buzzed on the table. It was Mark, asking if I was coming home for lunch. I silenced the phone and put it in my bag. I didn't want to think about Mark. I didn't want to think about my house, or my golden retriever, or my safe, predictable life. I just wanted to look at Maya. Her eyes were exactly the same. Deep, observant, and constantly moving. When we finally said goodbye, she wrote her new number on a napkin and slid it across the table. Our fingers brushed. The contact was electric. It sent a shock wave straight down my spine. "Call me Ollie," she said softly. "Don't disappear on me again." I walked to my car in a daze. I sat in the driver's seat for 20 minutes, just gripping the steering wheel, trying to slow my heart rate. My life had completely changed in 3 hours. The next month was a blur of psychological torture and intoxicating euphoria. Maya seamlessly integrated herself back into my life. I introduced her to Mark. Mark, being the good, oblivious man that he is, was thrilled. "It's so great you have your childhood friend back, honey," he said one evening, over dinner. "You've seemed so much happier lately." He had no idea. He had no idea that the reason I was glowing, the reason I had so much energy, was because I was completely consumed by a secret obsession. Maya started coming over for dinner. She would sit at our dining table, drinking our wine, laughing at Mark's terrible jokes. Having her in my house, in the space I shared with my husband, was agonizing. Every time she looked at me across the table, the air in the room seemed to vanish. I felt like a teenager hiding a massive secret from her parents. But I wasn't a teenager. I was a 33-year-old married woman. The dynamic between Maya and me was completely different now. In high school, it was innocent. Now, it was charged. The physical tension between us was a living, breathing thing in the room. When Mark would go to the kitchen to get more wine, Maya would look at me. Just look at me. Her dark eyes would trace my face, my neck, my lips. She never said anything inappropriate. She didn't have to. The silence was deafening. I started finding excuses to see her without Mark. We would meet for lunch. We would go to art galleries. We would take long walks in the park. Every time we were alone, the invisible magnetic field between us grew stronger. We started sitting closer to each other. When we walked, our shoulders would brush. When we laughed, she would casually touch my arm, and my skin would burn for hours afterward. I was losing my mind. I couldn't focus on work. I couldn't sleep. I would lie in bed next to Mark, listening to him snore, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Maya's hands. I felt like a monster. I was betraying my husband in my heart every single day. I was living a double life. On the outside, I was the perfect suburban wife. On the inside, I was a woman desperate to blow up her entire life for a chance to be with her best friend. I kept waiting for Maya to cross the line. I kept waiting for her to say something, to make a move. But she never did. She was incredibly careful. She respected my marriage. She kept her distance, and that made me want her even more. The repression was suffocating. I started drinking more wine just to quiet my thoughts. I started picking small fights with Mark, projecting my own guilt onto him. He didn't understand why I was suddenly so irritable. He would just apologize and try to fix things, which only made me feel worse. I was drowning. I needed a release. I needed the truth to come out, even if it destroyed everything. And then, the storm came. It happened on a Friday night in late November. But Mark had gone out of town. He went on a weekend fishing trip with his brothers. It was the first time I was going to be alone in the house overnight since Maya returned. I called her immediately. "Mark is gone for the weekend," I said into the phone, my voice trembling slightly. "Come over. I'll order Thai food." She was at my door 20 minutes later. We ate on the living room floor, exactly like we used to do when we were teenagers. We opened a bottle of expensive red wine. Outside, a massive thunderstorm was rolling in. The rain started to lash against the windows. The wind howled. It felt like the universe was isolating us from the rest of the world. We finished the first bottle of wine quickly. I opened a second one. We were laughing, reminiscing about some terrible teacher we had in high school. But as the night wore on, the alcohol began to strip away our defenses. The easy laughter faded. The conversation slowed down. The silence between us stretched out, thick and heavy. We were sitting a few feet apart on the plush rug. Maya was swirling the dark red liquid in her glass, staring into it as if it held the secrets of the universe. I watched her. I watched the way the dim light caught the edge of her jaw. I watched the graceful line of her neck. I couldn't take my eyes off her. "Maya," I said suddenly. My voice sounded loud in the quiet room. She didn't look up. "Yeah? Why did you leave?" The question hung in the air, like a ghost. I had never asked her. It was the elephant in the room that we had both politely ignored for 2 months. After graduation, I pushed, my heart hammering. "You just vanished. You left me. You broke my heart. Why?" Maya stopped swirling her wine. Her hand gripped the glass so tightly, I thought the stem might snap. She stayed perfectly still for a long time. When she finally lifted her head to look at me, her eyes were shining with tears. The mask was completely gone. "I left because I was dying, Ollie," she whispered. Her voice was cracked and raw. "Me?" I frowned, confused. "Dying? What are you talking about?" She put her wine glass down on the floor. She crossed her legs and took a deep, shaky breath. "I was watching you," she said, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "I was watching you go on dates with boys. I was helping you pick out dresses for prom to go with Steve. I was listening to you talk about kissing them. I was sleeping in your bed, holding you, and knowing, with absolute certainty, that you were never going to look at me the way I looked at you. I stopped breathing. The room started to spin. Because we were girls, she continued, her voice breaking. Because it was the early 2000s and we lived in a conservative town where that just didn't happen. I left because being your best friend was killing me. I was so madly, desperately in love with you, Ollie. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't watch you marry some guy and be the maid of honor at your wedding. So I ran. All the puzzle pieces of my youth violently snapped into place. The intense jealousy I felt when she talked to other girls. The way my heart raced when she played with my hair. It hadn't just been me. We had both been drowning, too terrified to reach out and save each other. Maya.n. I choked out, tears spilling down my own face. I came back because I thought I was over it, she said, letting out a bitter, agonizing laugh. I thought, 15 years is enough time. She's married now. She's straight? It's safe. But the second I saw you in that coffee shop, she shook her head, burying her face in her hands. I knew I was just as doomed as I was at 17. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said this. I should go. She started to scramble to her feet. Panic seized me. Complete, primal panic. I couldn't let her leave. Not again. Not after I finally knew the truth. No, I yelled. My voice echoed loudly in the quiet house, cutting through the sound of the rain. I scrambled up from the floor and grabbed her wrist. She stopped. She didn't turn around. Her shoulders were shaking. Ollie, let me go, she sobbed, keeping her back to me. Please? You're married. You have a good life. I can't ruin this for you. Let me go. My life is a lie, I cried, the absolute truth finally tearing its way out of my throat. It's a quiet, safe, miserable lie. I don't want it. I don't want any of it. She slowly turned around to look at me. Her beautiful face was stained with tears. She looked terrified, vulnerable, and completely exposed. I didn't think about Mark. I didn't think about my parents, or my neighbors, or the devastating explosion this was going to cause in my life. I didn't care about the collateral damage. I only cared about the woman standing in front of me, the woman I had spent 15 years trying to forget. I pulled her wrist, closing the distance between us, and I kissed her. The moment our lips touched, a shockwave tore through my entire body. It wasn't a hesitant kiss. It wasn't careful. It was a violent collision of 15 years of starved, repressed desperation. Maya gasped against my mouth. Her hands immediately flew up to fist in my hair, pulling me closer, as if she was afraid I was going to disappear. I wrapped my arms around her waist, pulling her flush against my body. It felt like coming home. It felt like waking up from a 33-year coma. Not even. I had kissed my husband 1,000 times, but I had never felt this. I had never felt this absolute, all-consuming, terrifying fire. It burned through every single defense mechanism I had ever built. We stumbled backwards, hitting the sofa. I pushed her down onto the cushions, following her down, completely lost in her taste, her smell, her warmth. Every touch felt like a revelation. The boundaries of friendship, marriage, and history blurred into nothingness. There was only Maya, only this room. Well, only this moment. That night, I didn't just betray my husband. I betrayed the entire identity I had built for myself over the last 15 years. I shattered the illusion of the straight suburban wife. I embraced the chaotic, terrifying truth of who I actually was. And the most terrifying part of all? I didn't regret a single second of it. As I lay next to her on the sofa in the early hours of the morning, watching her sleep, I felt a profound sense of peace. The storm outside had passed. The house was quiet, but the storm inside me was just beginning. Mark comes home tomorrow afternoon. My suitcases are already packed and sitting by the front door. I don't know how I am going to look a good man in the eye and break his heart. I don't know how I am going to explain to my conservative family that I am leaving my husband for my childhood female best friend. There will be screaming. There will be tears. There will be judgment and anger. My comfortable, safe life, as I know it is, officially over. It is going to burn to the ground. But as I look at Maya's face, bathed in the soft morning light filtering through the blinds, I know I am ready. For the first time in my entire life, I am not afraid of the fire. I am ready to burn.